I'm Scott Alan Miller, and this is my life living in Leon, Nicaragua. Today I had questions from two different people about two seemingly unrelated topics, but really they're pretty closely related. And one is a direct question as to what exactly do I do? I've had little pieces of my background and history on the show over the years, and I have lots of little tiny rocks under my feet, so I'm kind of sweeping them away. And if you really watch the show for a long time, you can probably piece together a lot about my background, but a little bit about what I actually do day to day, because people really do wonder what I do for a job here and how I'm able to pay the bills being not exactly retired. And also someone else had questions about looking at getting into property investing here in Nicaragua, because it seems that I have some investments that are part of my portfolio here. And so what does that look like and what are my thoughts on that? So today we're going to be talking about my personal journey of making an income so that I'm able to live abroad here in Latin America. So we're going to get to that right after the pause. Before we dive into today's topic, let's have a couple little housekeeping things we want to get out of the way. First, if you'd like to have a place to chat with everyone, of course, get down in the show notes and check out all the information we have in there. Look down at the comments and say hello and all that. Of course, that's fantastic. If you'd like to be on the show, there is all the information you need in the show notes as to how to send in a video of yourself, and we'll put you on the show. And that is so much fun. It's so valuable when people do that. We love that. So please consider doing that. It's really easy to do. Or just ask your question down below, and we'll try to get to that. We also have a WhatsApp Expats in Nicaragua group. Link is in the show description. Again, absolutely free. Just join and chat with so many people from here. It's a great place to get information or have resources when you're coming to the country and you're like, what do I do about this thing I didn't think about? There's lots of people on all the time that can jump on and help you. It's super lively. It's super useful. We also want to remind people that Marcela, who is on the show from time to time and helps produce my live stream, has been out sick. She has cancer. We have an episode where we went into the details of her cancer at this time. We don't have new updates yet at the time that I'm recording this, but we do have a GoFundMe. Again, it's in the show notes, and we really do appreciate everyone who's helping to support her family. Her healthcare is free, but there's a lot of ancillary costs. She has to have a whole new wardrobe. She has to have wigs. She has to have people to watch her kids, and a lot of transportation and food and just care that is needed as she goes through a long-term chemotherapy. Okay, that's all of our housekeeping. Let's get to the show. Today, we're going to start with what do I do for a real living. So first of all, I've been in IT and software engineering and business consulting for more than a third of a century. So I started a long time ago. I've been working in 5 different decades. By the time I was about 10 years into my career, a friend of mine who was working in the same field and I decided that we wanted to have our own firm. And there's a long story behind all this, but we started our own company that is still where I work today. So I've had the benefit of more than a quarter of a century with the same company and one that I am a principal of. So that has been a wonderful adventure. It's one of the defining kind of aspects of my life that I've had this business and family for so long, and it really is an amazing adventure from a business perspective, right? We really feel like those of us who are in the company together, we're on this adventure together, and it really does feel like a family. When I fly to other offices to meet with, our team members have been with us for a long time in many cases, and it really feels like family reunions, old friends getting together. And even though we work together every day, it's a really cool experience. It's very, very valuable. Now, what that company does is pretty broad. We had our beginnings in doing small business IT outsourcing, right? The kind of thing you mostly think of as like an MSP. Not quite the same model, but very, very related. Small company could be 2 people, could be 100 people. They would call us up and we would come do their IT, whether it's taking care of their desktops or whatever, just very basic stuff. But pretty early on in our evolution, we became the first company to create cloud software for human medical facilities. We worked with research hospitals in the United States, and so the entire cloud medical thing is actually something that I think using the term invent is inappropriate in that case, but we were the pioneers of it. We were the first ones to put that into production and to propose it to hospitals and get to do that. So it was a landmark in the industry and in my career as well. So we have been both an IT firm and a software engineering firm, which are essentially unrelated disciplines or lightly integrated disciplines for most of my career. And I had done both prior to having my own company, so it did make sense. So that has been something that I've always done. The mid portion of my career was almost all focused on Wall Street and hedge fund consulting. I did that for a very long time. Really enjoyed my time on Wall Street. It was an excellent opportunity and growth and just a wonderful, wonderful experience. But at some point, my wife and I decided that our goals were different than what corporate America had in store for us, and we wanted to move to Europe, we thought was the goal. We had small children, and we wanted to be able to have a lot more time as a family. So effectively, I was able to retire at that point. I did take a nonprofit job for a little while, but it was very, very toxic, and decided that was not an environment we wanted to be in very quickly. I maybe put in 6 months in that environment, and we moved on. But we used that time to move to Europe. We thought we were going to be retired and spent a number of years living in Europe while I was in a kind of retirement mode. I took a part-time work doing technical writing and helping produce conference material and that kind of stuff, but definitely not like full-time work, very flexible, very part-time. Then we did have some life events that caused me to need to really go back to work. So a number of years ago, I returned from retirement and started working again, but really wanted to redefine what we were doing and wanted to be home and traveling and flexible, and so re-geared to be suitable for that. So working for my own company gives us a lot of flexibility, both in just the general work environment, and it gives us a lot of flexibility in where we can work, when we can work, the kind of clients that we take on, and so forth. And it has been really fantastic. So over the last few years since we came to Nicaragua, a lot of my primary focus is, of course, regular IT consulting for my team that does a lot of small business IT support. When they run into things that they're over their heads or past capacity or whatever, they come to me. So I spend a lot of time with that and account management. I also work with really major accounts. So we have Fortune 10, we have governments that we support. We do a lot of very high-end consulting that is not available from most firms. So that's a very specialty thing, and that's something that we really enjoy getting to do. It's a really meaningful thing. I'm far enough along in my career that I get to do the really cool work. So having our own firm for that is great because we have all this flexibility. So it's nice for reasons that people don't really understand until you start looking into this. How am I going to live abroad? And we all, we have answers, right? It's, well, you're going to get a remote job and you're going to, just work remotely for a company in the US or in Canada or whatever. And a lot of people do that and it works out fine. But a lot of people are like, well, there's this, I'm worried about, what happens when you change jobs and how's that look? And what do you do with like all these little bits of complications? And one of the answers that's kind of the brute force approach to a lot of this is if you have your own firm that you're working remotely for, then your firm can take on one or more clients. It can change clients. It can do different things. It can re-gear, and it maintains a certain separation of where you are from where the business is. You keep the business in the United States, but you're somewhere else. That's one approach. You can, there's just so many complexities. Who's going to handle our checks and stuff? Well, the business will handle all those things. And still, that is not magic. You need to have a functional business that's making money so it can hire staff, hire resources, pay for things that it needs. But that is often how people who are really successful do that, to eliminate a lot of the headaches and complications that people talk about when they say things like, well, where am I going to maintain an address? Well, I get to maintain an address at the corporate headquarters. Well, where are we going to have mail sent? Well, again, send our mail to the corporate headquarters. Well, where are we going to deal with if I need a package? You guessed it, same address, right? We have people who are there and can handle things. And so any of those kinds of things that come up, I have a legitimate U.S. address and location and everything where things go through. And so if we're changing clients, that doesn't mean I'm changing jobs. My job is consistent. If I need to show stable income, the job shows that stable income. If I need to show investment income, I can show it through the investment. If I need to show salary, I can show it through salary. If I have to show it through ownership, I can show it through ownership. It gives me all that flexibility to shift how I'm paid or shift how I'm represented, given different jurisdictions that look for different things, depending on the country that you're potentially moving to. Each of them have different requirements. Owning a company that pays you as a worker gives you the ability to demonstrate whatever is the particular aspect of income or stability that any particular jurisdiction is looking for. Here in Nicaragua, it's common that they don't want to see salary, they want to see dividends. No problem. We can simply decide to pay ourselves through dividends rather than salary, and then it's super demonstrable for exactly what Nicaragua needs. and so forth. If they want to see ownership, well, then we can show that, right? It's all completely transparent, at least at your discretion, and that gives you a lot of power. So that while it's not right for everyone, this is a really important thing that we do talk about, maybe not enough, that running your own business, having those resources can be one of the best things ever. And the reality is this is good advice for people who are not going to be expats as well. That is a huge career builder for me. If I didn't own my own firm and control my own hours and were able to take on double the work of a normal person, during my younger years, I used owning a company to build a resume really quickly because it allowed me to take jobs in the evening, jobs in the morning, jobs on the weekend, and run them all through the company. It allowed me to hire people. It allowed me to do internal projects. It allowed me to just do things at a scale, at a speed, at a flexibility that a normal job would not let you do. And if you work at a normal job, so in IT, building a resume is bigger than in a lot of other fields, like it's a bigger component. If you work in restaurant management, then you manage a restaurant, and it's pretty much time and the restaurant or restaurant chain that you're managing. Those things build your resume. Sure, you could talk about projects you've done. You turned around a failing kitchen, but you're talking about projects. It's more of a traditional resume. But in IT, your resume is built off of often technology and projects, not places that you've worked per se. And so it's really easy if you have your own company to be looking at a technology that almost no one has adopted, or you don't have any clients that are willing to adopt it yet. Well, your own company can decide to adopt that technology, and you can gain real hands-on, real-world experience implementing it for a real company. And quite often doing it for yourself is far more valuable as a learning and experience perspective approach than doing it for someone else, where you may be curtailed by a manager who just moves really slow, or a committee that don't know what they're doing and make things break, or having a team of people and you have other people to rely on, so they're doing a lot of the work and you're only learning a little bit. When you do it for yourself, it is such a valuable experience. And I've had a lot of places that I've interviewed, including on Wall Street, where these kinds of conversations is the difference between, oh, he's an okay candidate, and oh, I didn't realize we can throw anything at you. You've done it all. I've had so many places say you're the only person on staff who did everything from soup to nuts. You bought the hardware, you sourced the software, you did the installation, you did the configuration, you ran it in production, you went through a life cycle. I don't have a single person who has ever done that as a whole. And working through my career, I almost never meet people who have those kinds of experiences, and they always have these big gaps of they're very myopic when looking at a lot of projects. They know the piece that they know, and they can't really see the big picture. They can't figure out how the components work together. They can't figure out how to apply all the technology pieces to the business aspect of it. Well, sure, I can make it all work, but I can't think through which thing is going to make the whole most efficient, or make the whole most cost effective, or make the company the most money. But the approach that I took, where we were always doing it for ourselves, we always had to have those things in mind. How much are we investing? What's our ROI on that? Is this going to pay for itself? Is the experience worth the pain? Do we really address all the needs as we go through it, and so forth? It's extremely valuable experience from that perspective as well. So it's few things in my life that I'm more thankful for than having started my own company very young. It has absolutely changed my life, or made it what it is. And it's interesting because now at 48 years old, I have worked for myself not even close to half my life. It is so much more than half my life, and it still feels like, we're very early on in the company. It's like we're still figuring things out. We're still in those growth modes. We're still in those early years. I can see the company really going for a long time with a lot of exciting things, and it has a lot of amazing projects going on right now. We're really proud of the work that we're doing, so it's exciting being able to work for myself. So that is where I actually pull a salary from that company. I work more or less full time. I'm at my desk much of the day, so if you come and see me at the house, if I'm doing videos and stuff, I'm doing it in between meetings. I'm taking a break for lunch, or I have some time where I'm just working on something and I have a thought and I want to get it out into a video. I'll take a break, but I'm at my desk every day working for the company. So that is the bulk of what I do. That pays my salary. That gives me some cushion and comfort, and allows me to work anywhere in the world. And gives me a really strong history, so I have a lot of comfort knowing that there are lots of options should the company ever fail. I have many ways that I could go out and work again additionally. Now, when we first moved to Nicaragua, I did take some time there to write my first book, my first formal book. I've done a number of books over the years, but they were always collections of other work that I had done, or didn't go through a formal publishing process. But right as I was moving to Nicaragua, I got a kind of dream publishing deal with a major publisher, with Pact Publishing, in my field, right? This is not a novel, this is a technical book, but I got to write kind of my dream book, which is super boring for most people, but Linux Administration Best Practices by Pact Publishing is published and is available on Amazon. I have print copies of the book to put on my bookshelf. It's available in digital format. It's such a cool thing to have done, and the feedback on it has been fantastic over the years. Of course, it's not a very popular subject, but I get every week, and this has been years, right? I wrote that 4 years ago. Every week I get my publisher's report, and we don't sell very many, but I sell. It's rare that I have a week where none have sold. So not a big money maker, not a huge thing, but it did bring in pretty close to a year's revenue already at this point. So well worth it, and such a meaningful thing for someone who's been in the field for a long time. That was one of those things that was missing for me. I've taught at university. I've taught in high school. I've written curriculums. I've overseen college programs. I have worked as a technical resource at university, in medical, in veterinary, in manufacturing, in government at every level, town, state, federal, Indian nation. I've worked for international companies. I've worked for the US Fed. I've worked on Wall Street, on Hedge Fund Row, East Coast, West Coast, Middle Coast. Internationally, I've worked in Canada, England, Spain, where I've actually had offices. And that's all during that part of my career. My own company is based throughout the Western Hemisphere. We have offices in places like Bolivia, Argentina, Guatemala, Belize, Nicaragua here, Panama, and Mexico, right? So it's been so exciting, so vibrant of a career because of those things, that it's just amazing. But having done all that stuff, the one thing that I really felt I was missing at about the time we came here was writing a formal book. And so going through that process with a real publisher, people who were experienced, and they would talk about, well, this is how we should approach this because this is what people like to read, or this is what the market expects. And then I would push back, well, in this case, this technical thing overrides that, or we really need to get this point across, or the thing you're trying to edit, you can't. This doesn't mean the same thing. Great experience, worked with wonderful people over there, and just very happy about that. So that was a big piece of what I was doing there. And I am very seriously considering writing a book now about, and I know this will be a shock for everyone, but it's maybe worth writing a book about Nicaragua. That is potentially in the cards. I'm kicking the idea around. It's a ton of work. It took me a year to write the last book, but a lot of that was because of the publishers, but they also pushed me, so maybe it was faster than it would be otherwise. I think writing a book about Nicaragua, there's a lot of abstract, like exactly where do I start with this? I don't know, and that makes it really hard for me. Well, that's possible. So that's my income. That's my basics. My wife works for the same company. My business partner works for the same company. We have lots of employees, right? We're not a large company, but we're a sizable company working from many countries. And so that provides this very strong foothold into, I have a concrete income plan for the long haul. So that is the first question. The second question that was asked is, but I do real estate and property development here in Nicaragua, and is this part of my income stream? So very importantly, yes, I do. I'm very passionate about investing in Nicaragua, but I'm passionate about investing in Nicaragua because I believe in Nicaragua, because I want to make a difference. But it is not part of my income stream. It could be at some point. I don't want to rule that out. I certainly would like it if it became part of an income stream. That would be the most fantastic thing you could possibly imagine. However, it is not at this time. I'll start with a real quick story. When we first purchased property here, I'm not going to go into our purchasing process. That's a good story for another time. But when we first purchased here, we thought we were purchasing a house. We were not as confused as this makes it sound, but just bear with me. It makes the story quick and easy. We thought we were buying a house, and when we moved here, what we found out was that we had bought a hotel that was fully operational with reservations and a relatively busy restaurant with a concert schedule. When we got here, we were staying in another location just down the street, and the management that was there, which had been brought in to shut everything down, to turn it back into a house, asked us what we wanted to do. How do we want to reach out to the reservations? How do we want to deal with people who thought they were going to be using the hotel? And we hated the idea of turning people away from a hotel that thought they had booked and had a place to go. And so we said, well, let's take a look at these. And we looked at the reservations and we said, you know what, let's just keep them. We'll live across the street and use this as like part of our house, but we'll have rooms across the street rented out from somewhere else, and you know, the hotel should make enough money to pay for our rooms, which started off as a good plan. We really didn't like where we were staying. Ended up moving into the hotel, using some of the space for ourselves, which was not ideal, but we did that. And so we lived in the hotel for the first year, but it ran as a hotel. Now, I've said this on the channel a lot. One, the market has been terrible. Both the real estate market has been super depressed, and the investment market, the tourism market, have been very depressed. There's very few tourists in the country over the last several years. And so because of this, places like hotels and restaurants, especially in places like beaches and more touristy areas, are hit hard. There's almost no traffic, at least compared to the really good days when people were coming out all the time. And so the ability to make profit on places, especially on the beaches, is incredibly hard, to the point where I really don't know places that are doing that. I know one or two that are probably doing it. I don't have any that I have proof of, but I have some that I'm pretty suspicious are making money. But when they are, normally they're making money, not including a complete understanding of how much they invested. Maybe they invested, you know, we'll just say $1 million. No one's really doing that, but let's say they put in $1 million and now they're, you know, earning, 50,000 per year. And you say, ooh, it doesn't sound like a slam dunk, but it sounds like a good solid earning. And you say, well, actually, if you were to invest that million in just something where you don't have to work, you'd make at least that much, if not quite a bit more. So that's actually losing money compared to a baseline, even though it technically counts as profit, but you still have to pay taxes on it, unlike, well, you would the other way too, but there's still taxes. But in one case, if you're investing in like an S&P 500 index fund, and yes, I understand a lot of things are changing in the market right now, so we'll talk about that in a future video. But if you were to do that, you don't have to work at all. The money is working for you. You do nothing. And if you're putting it into the places that I've seen here who seem to be doing okay, they are making just enough money to call it profit, we think, but we see that the people who are owning it, that are putting in that money, one, have tied up all that those financial assets and now need them to produce, and they have to work pretty much full-time managing and running the place themselves. And so they are working a full-time job. And if they're making any money off of the property, it's really just an attempt to cover their salary, and no one's doing so and making a really good salary. Maybe they're making enough to live on. Maybe they're happy with it. They just love the project, and nothing wrong with passion projects. Those are hobby businesses and they're wonderful things. A lot of people are retirees who do it because they seems like fun. How fun. And I have friends who do this, right? They run a small hotel. They really just like to have guests pass through, have people to sit out, have a beer with, look at the ocean, and talk, and have this constant stream of strangers to do that. What a fun thing to do in your retirement. Absolutely. But are they making money at it? Well, they may not be losing money, and maybe it's forming some kind of income. But if they were to go work an online job, even as retirees, just doing a little call center stuff or some simple thing, translating some things, they would probably make quite a bit more money. So it's not that the business is actually profitable when you look at it from a business perspective, but it may not be losing hard money. And so if you're looking at it from a hobby perspective, it may be offsetting to some degree. But most properties, the majority of people that we talk to, are actually losing money and have been for quite some time. And so nearly every business is for sale. We just had someone comment on the channel the other day that 5 major businesses in San Juan del Sur all went up for sale within 48 hours of each other. Clearly, something is wrong with the market and the money is not there. Places do not sell when they're making good money. They sell when they're desperate, or they are making good money but know it's about to go away. So something is going on. But even 5 years ago, when we looked in San Juan del Sur, things were very, very cheap because the market had collapsed. So even there, we don't see very many people actually making any kind of reasonable profits. Still, they may be able to pay their bills, but they're doing so by consuming their own labor, consuming their own investment, rather than truly being profitable in a business sense. So in general, I'm going to say no. One, it is not part of my income stream. I bleed out. I have to have my core business has to do really well, because I and several other people who do work to some degree. I do very little. I mostly help with like marketing and stuff, because some of you may be aware I have like cameras and things that I like to use and do some promotion stuff. So I help with some of that kind of stuff. And like last Saturday, I was in just taking pictures of the cooking process and taking pictures of plated food and stuff, which is fun. And so I don't mind doing that kind of work on the weekend. And then we have other people from our team who are doing website design, who are doing promotions, who are doing Instagram, who are doing interior design. Like lots of work goes in, and that is mostly a personal donation into the business. It's not making money to return back out. And it's okay, because for us, it's a passion thing, and we love it, and we love having it, and we love making a difference and providing jobs. And so it's all fine. But if we were to eliminate it, we actually be more financially comfortable. It does act as a ballast, if you will. If you're thinking of your personal economy as a big ship, then having something like properties in another country, or we often refer to it as a hedge, but hedging is slightly different, and that is something that is happening. But as a hedge, it's a different aspect. There is a ballasting aspect, which is basically in this kind of scenario, we have a sometimes ebb and flow of income from the main business. It's not an even monthly. It's not bad. It's relatively even compared to a lot of businesses. Ooh, that's a bit of wind. And so we're thankful for that, but it does have some ebb and flow, and the hotels have some ebb and flow as well. The properties that we have here, which are mostly hotels, but they have different ebbs and flows. And so because of that, it acts a little bit like a ballast. If we have a really good month, it tends to absorb some of that potential profits. If we have a terrible month, it tends to shed some of the losses. And so it kind of acts like a stabilizing force. Overall, it's a loss, but it's not a big one at this point. For a while, it was a major loss for a long time. It would take many years of serious profits for it to recover from the losses that it has incurred in the past. So even if we have a good month, it's not like, woohoo, this is a great sign of things. It's just we have offset a tiny fraction of the major losses that we've incurred in the past. So are things getting better? I think the answer is yes. Both we're getting better at business and the market is picking up. And things are getting better, but our own expertise, which I talk about a lot, the lack of expertise that most expats have when you come to the country is significant. We have a lot of experience and a lot of expertise compared to most places. We've run a lot of businesses as a team. This is something we're very good at, but there's still a learning curve to figuring out new markets like hospitality and doing so in a new country like Nicaragua. Now, I've done hospitality work in the past, other stories for another time. So we did have experience in that, but it's such a different market that it only applies so much. There's just tons and tons of learning curve. So we're getting better. And so our bleed on that is less and less, and we see a positive future someday. And that, I tell a lot of people, right? When you're looking, if you have a solid business plan, chances are you will make money eventually. What will you ever make enough to overcome the baseline calculations? It'll be tough. Will you ever make enough to justify using it to pay your own salary? That would be tough. But if it's a labor of love and you need to have enough money to live on, you could potentially make sense. But you could be looking at many years and very high risk. It's very easy to fall into a situation where you're going to lose for forever. It's very easy to fall into a situation where you might make the money, but it's so far out that you can't make it that long. So those are real considerations. Doing business here in Nicaragua is extremely difficult and extremely risky for many reasons. It's a very small, very volatile market that has very low return rates, and that alone makes it super difficult compared to something like the US, which is the polar opposite. But then to combine being an expat with a complete lack of knowledge of the market on top of that means that there's very little chance that you will be able to compete with the businesses that are here, with the business processes that are here. And so you're at a major disadvantage. So your chances of making money, unless you're holding it like us, where we have no intent of making money, we can run it at some amount of loss for forever. We have other sources of income that are backfilling that, and it's a labor of love, and we're doing it because we really want to have these businesses. They have more of a chance because they can hold out through the lean times. They can go decades where there's no profits and still be there and build a reputation. And when the things turn around, yeah, they'll have lost so much that it'll always have been a bad idea financially, but they'll be able to potentially have those profits someday. They can hold out. But even if you come in and you're like, well, I've got enough cash to have a run rate for 4 years, we'll bleed for 4 years, and by the end of 4 years, we got to be making money, right? Maybe, but there's a very real possibility that the answer to that is no. So be aware of just how risky that is. Now, that's operational hospitality properties. It's a little bit different. What if you're only investing in land? Well, that's potentially a very valuable thing. The market is very depressed, and this could be land or just land and houses. But of course, anything that ties up your money that you're not gaining on immediately is kind of losing. We expect really good growth in property values over the next 10 to 20 years, but that is a risk that you have to wait 10 to 20 years just to get a really solid feel of where the market is going. So that is a bit scary. Of course, we do see people doing some things, finding niche markets where there are gaps. That is always a possibility. And we do see people finding some properties and doing well. We do see some people finding some like Airbnb opportunities and doing okay. Is it paying their bills? Is it used as their income? No. So are there cases where it's profitable? Yes. But are there cases where it is not, yes, absolutely, some do still lose money, but obviously things like Airbnb at least have real estate value. But anything that you're doing in real estate, you want to be super careful, because while there is a general positive trend, there is also a trend that those coming from abroad, expats moving into the country or not moving into the country and doing real estate purchases, are very likely to be maybe more likely to overspend on property. And so let's be clear, if you have a $40,000 piece of property, let's just say land that's worth $40,000, and you're really excited about it and you purchase it now, and you kind of get emotional about it, and you don't do all of your research, and they convince you because it's a piece of land you just fall in love with and you got to have it. You spend $60,000 to get that, and you say, well, but the market's going up, so even though I spent too much, it'll come up and I'll still make profits. It's okay, right? We always justifying our emotions. And then the market comes up by 50%. We see a $200,000 house turns into a $300,000 house. And maybe this takes 3 years. And someone who bought that same property for $40,000 could, over those couple of years, sell it for that 50% gain, sell it for $60,000. And they're like, yes, I made this good return over those few years. Not a huge amount of money, but a really solid return. But the person who purchased it at 60 is now only able to sell it at 60, which represents, in this particular case, a very small loss, because with the taxes and overhead and time, all those things that you've done, there's actually a hard loss of maybe $1,000 or $2,000, and basically you're getting just a little bit less out of it than you put into it. But also you've sat on that money for, say, 3 years, which should have been earning somewhere in 8 to 9%, maybe a little bit lower these days because we're going into a recession, but say 8% for 3 years would have been a really good solid return. Not as good as that 50% that the other guy got, but if you overbuy by that kind of number, which foreigners often are willing to do, often quite a bit more than that, you may see really good growth in the market and realize losses because of that mistake. So you really have to be here and savvy and paying attention and putting a lot of effort. If you want to get into real estate here, which I am, I would recommend years of investment into being prepared to do that. That is not something you want to do lightly. It is not a market like the United States where you can act quickly, where you can act mostly blindly, and where you have resources to protect you, meaning resources that give you really good comparables and long-term charts that show market movement. There's a lot of mathematical tools in the United States that allow you to predict what your real exposure is. But here in Nicaragua, that is not the case. We see people spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on properties that are worth tens of thousands of dollars. They can lose their lifetime nest eggs overnight because of what they thought was a savvy business deal. They thought the place would be worth millions. They thought they were taking advantage of someone getting it for hundreds of thousands, and it wasn't worth that many digits. It is so easy to skew the belief of someone's real estate knowledge, their real estate gauge, right? Their ability to estimate value by such an enormous amount that you can really fleece people for their lifetime earnings in transactions while having them truly believe that they've gotten value out of it. And they won't actually realize, there's the financial term realize, they will not in the mental term realize the incredible danger, the incredible risk or loss that they have incurred for so long. And the people who were involved are so far long gone at that point. And what are you going to do? You can't go back and there's no recourse anyway, because it's a caveat emptor. You bought the property, you did your evaluation, that you got emotional about it, that people presented high prices and you fell for it, is not their problem. It is your job to do due diligence or to hire people who do that for you. So be really careful getting into the real estate investment game here for sure. But importantly, it is not part of my income stream. I would be very, very cautious of looking at using it for anything more than an unnecessary supplement. Absolutely, I encourage all of you to invest in Nicaragua. Bring in US dollars, bring in Canadian dollars, bring in euros. Make a positive difference. Invest in things that help the community, help the environment, help beautify places, help keep big corporations from buying swaths of land. Do good things with your money, absolutely. But don't overextend yourself and look at Nicaraguan investments as things that you plan on living off of, or you're probably going to, at best, expose yourself in a very risky risky way, and at worst, lose your nest eggs. We want to protect you guys against that. Certainly want to help Nicaragua, but not at the expense of my viewership. Thanks for joining me. Like and subscribe. Thank you for the questions. Really enjoy getting these, but definitely consider sending in video questions. I like those even more, and I think the audience does too. It's a great way to connect everyone together. If you'd like to help support Marcela in her chemo journey and recovery and help her family, check out the links below for her GoFundMe. That really has been very meaningful. We are trying to raise a total of $5,000, and we've raised, at the time I'm recording this, which is the first day we had it up, nearly $2,000. So we're going along well. We have a long way to go, but she needs basically $200 per month as a run rate to be able to cover the extra expenses of taking care of her children and such when she is very, very sick, and that we need that to last for about 2 years. So that's where the math comes from as to why that number is so meaningful. But the money is coming in at a pace that should be able to keep her going. So even if it takes 2 years to raise $5,000, we're in great shape for that. And of course, if you have any questions, I think get down in the show notes, say hello, ask your questions, share the video with someone. If you're not aware, Thursdays we tend to do a live stream. It is long, it is fun, it is a great community. Make sure you save some time on a Thursday evening, Central America time, to join us for that. And I will see all of you tomorrow.